All right, Rob, here we are. Another episode of Ruminate. And there's some video game news that I need you to fill me in on because I've had kind of a busy day and haven't really followed what's going on with Tony Hawk.
Yeah, I mean, this is big for me personally. Like, this is what I care about. Like, there's no other. No other trailer.
I saw you posted about it on your site.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other trailer that could have come out today to make me more excited. But yeah, this is a remaster of Tony Hawk 3 and 4. And what's interesting about this, for some backstory, is they did remaster 1 and 2, I think in 2020, right. I believe. Was it?
Wow, is it that long ago?
I think so. I'm sure it was.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been at least a few years. They did that remaster. It, as far as everybody knows, it sold pretty well for, a remaster of a skateboarding game, which, it's a weird sell anyway.
Right.
And then the Call of Duty people bought the studio that made it, or they already owned it. I can't remember. I think they bought it, which was Vicarious Visions, who had made that remaster. And then they moved them all onto Call of Duty and shut the studio down. So there was kind of an assumption that this just wasn't happening.
That was right. That was just done. Yeah.
There's a guy, Andy THPS is his username. He was a designer on the remaster, and he'd worked on a whole bunch of other Tony Hawk games. He is not involved in it this time. So he found out like everybody else. It was kind of assumed that if anybody would know, he would know. But he had no idea either. It was, these sort of, they've been doing some marketing this week and stuff. So, rumors, obviously the rumors sort of started maybe a week or two ago. But yeah, this was essentially unexpected, until they started doing this.
Yeah, it sounds like it was really kind of, it was kind of out of the blue, really. I certainly hadn't heard anything about it.
Yeah, I had accepted that we weren't getting this. There's a certain crowd of Tony Hawk fans who want the Underground games and some of the other later games remastered. For me, 1, 2, 3, 4, perfect. That's all I care about. Anything else is a bonus, and I'd be happy, but these 4 is what I'm really, to have all these remastered, because the PS2 is good, and I do think it holds up pretty well. I think there's certain games where it doesn't hold up, and this is one of them. So I think a remaster really plays quite well for a game like this.
Interesting. How was the trailer? I actually haven't had a chance to watch anything.
The trailer was just showing off some of the levels, like the classic levels that were really obvious if you've played the games before. So Alcatraz, the cruise ship, Foundry, which is the first level of Tony Hawk 3. And there's not really a lot of info here. I mean, it kind of says everything you loved is back, which now that says to me, because so Tony Hawk 1, 2, and 3 had a pretty standard, you do a 2-minute run and you try and do goals. That's how it works. But for Tony Hawk 4, they changed it, and it was more of I wouldn't necessarily say open world, but you could go around, pick a goal to do. There was no time limit unless you were doing a specific task. So there was some question of whether they were going to even do that mode for Tony Hawk 4, because they could just put the levels in and be done with it.
Sure.
But it does seem like they're saying, yes, everything is going to be back, along with
that's cool.
Along with some new skaters, some new parks and things like that. So it seems like everything people would want. It's coming out in July, so July 11th. There's still going to be
What's it coming out on?
Everything. Literally everything.
Oh, okay.
So Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, Steam, the Microsoft Store, and Battle.net.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. Wow. I got to tell you that apps like Battle.net, I had it on my Mac at one point. Oh my gosh. That's the kind of software you don't want on your Mac.
Yeah, definitely.
Steam too, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, for testing games, I've done it, and it's like Steam for Mac, Battle.net, all those things. They're awful. They obviously want to log in the minute you turn on your Mac and boot up, and it's like, no, today I'm working. I'm not playing games. Please go away. And they're just not very good Mac apps for the most part.
Yeah, and it's also going to be on Game Pass as well, if that's what you care about. So,
yeah, I care about I think Game Pass is pretty cool. I'm actually subscribed right now. I mean, what my approach to things like Game Pass is wait for a deal, buy a few months, and then see if another deal comes around before it expires. And if it doesn't, I let it expire and then maybe pick it up again next time I see a deal. I mean, it's between GeForce Now and Game Pass, you can almost always be getting some kind of deal.
Yeah, definitely. I've just noticed as well that they have put up a blog post which is a preview of this brand new level that they've made called the Water Park. It looks like it's pretty big. It looks like a pretty big level with a whole lot of stuff going on.
Nice.
So, be very interested to know like what development team is working on this. Because, like I say, because they shut down Vicarious Visions. And I'm really just...
So is it inside Microsoft? It must be inside Microsoft, right?
Yeah, it would be, right? Because do they own the Call of Duty people?
Yeah, they do. They do. And if it's going to be on Game Pass too, I would think that means it's some sort of Microsoft Studios project.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're right. Yeah, so it's Microsoft, the Call of Duty people who owned Vicarious Visions. So yeah, it's Microsoft, I guess, all the way at the top. So, but yeah.
Interesting. Well, I think the Call of Duty people, the lesson is that you're not going to get a Call of Duty 7. You're just going to have to wait because you're going to have to play Tony Hawk with guns and zombies because there's just not going to be a Call of Duty 7. They've forsaken it for Tony Hawk.
I'd take that. Whatever. I just want more Tony Hawk games. This is fine. I'm genuinely very happy. Like you mentioned that I put up a little blog post because I've been obsessed with these games like for 20 years or something. I know. Yeah, I'm really excited for this and I'm going to instantly pre-order it as soon as I can.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a fun game. I'm looking forward to it. I'll have to check it out. I mean, I like that it's on so many different systems too. I mean, that seems like a game I might play on my Steam Deck. We'll have to see. Very nice. Well, you know what? Speaking of games, Rob, we launched a thing today at Mac Stories, which was a new version of NPC, Next Portable Console, which is now going weekly. And we have a Patreon with a bonus podcast called NPC XL that has kind of like deep dives and extra stuff. And that's been a bit of a project, but it's been a lot of fun launching it. It's been a fun podcast to do for the last 8 or 9 months at this point. And Patreon's a whole new world to me. It's kind of wild getting involved in that. It's been fun because it's been different than like dealing with. We've always worked with like Memberful for things like Club Mac Stories, but Patreon, which actually owns Memberful, is a whole different ballgame. And the reason we went with them, I guess, is because they're very game focused. Like a lot of video game projects of one sort of another end up on Patreon. And so it seemed like the logical place and the right fit for where it ought to be. And so, I mean, I guess we'll see. People seem to be pretty happy with it so far.
I mean, I'm just looking at this gorgeous artwork for NPC XL, to be honest.
Oh yeah, that's Brendan's work. Brendan Bigley, who's the co-host, one of the co-hosts with me and Federico. He does really great work on that stuff. And yeah, I just say, Brendan, here's the title of the episode. Could you make something nice for me? And he does a great job every time. He's pretty amazing with Photoshop.
Yeah, I'm gonna be hitting him up, asking him what font that is because it looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's a really cool
Mm.
font. I have no idea what he's using there. And so our first XL episode, which is for Patreon members, is all about the Sony PSP. So, speaking of Tony Hawk, I mean, the PSP is right up the Tony Hawk alley, I suppose. I actually own a PSP now. I bought a
Ooh.
PSP 3000 about a month ago.
I think we spoke about it last episode. Are you still enjoying it?
Yeah, I am. I don't have any Tony Hawk games. I got 5 games. I have Final Fantasy Crisis Core, Burnout Legends, Daxter, what else? Ridge Racer, and Vice City Stories. So I figured that was like a good variety, 5 games, and they're all on UMD. And right now I'm playing on UMD. I'm not like putting them on, micro SD cards and emulating or anything like that. I'm just playing them on the old-fashioned discs, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I just had a look for you on the Tony Hawk front. It looks like your best option is Tony Hawk Underground 2 Remix. I'm not sure.
All right.
I'm assuming that this is a cut-down version of... I don't know. I'm looking at some screenshots, and it looks pretty good, actually.
Well, that's the thing about the PSP is like, at least, I mean, someone like Brendan's co-host, Stephen Hilger on Into the Aether, describes the PSP as the PlayStation 1.8. It's like really close to PS2 land, but not quite there. And so, yeah, I mean, it probably looks pretty good compared to some of the stuff of the era.
Yeah, because I know we mentioned this, I think, last time, but like a lot of the games for the PSP that they ended up on the PS2, but so because they were like these sort of cut down versions, and then they'd make the PS2 version later on. But yeah, so I'm not sure what remix means, if I'm honest. I'm looking at the Wikipedia page now, and it doesn't really tell me. So, although it does have 4 exclusive levels, which is pretty cool. So,
yeah, the thing about it's maybe a little bit like Burnout Legends. I've always been kind of a fan of the Burnout series. And Legends was kind of a best of. It mixed, I think, like courses from 2 and 3. So, kind of a best of collection.
Yeah, I mean, even just looking at this, I'm like, oh, should I buy a PSP? But I really shouldn't. This is a silly thing to do.
Yeah, so the one I got was it's modded. It's got a rechargeable battery in it, and it's got a transparent case. And micro SD card adapter thing. So that's worked out pretty well. But yeah, it's not like quite as modded as some of them that are out there. But it's been a lot of fun to play with.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that that's been my biggest. That's been kind of my obsession for the last couple of weeks, is getting that thing off the ground and playing around with, dealing with, I mean, one of the things we did was we moved NPC out of the Mac Stories YouTube channel, which was kind of a hard decision for me because I have this streak in me, which is like, I'm going to do YouTube the way I want to do YouTube. And, the algorithms be damned to an extent. But the reality of YouTube is that if you have a gaming podcast mixed in with a bunch of Apple tech podcasts, it doesn't really help anybody. It doesn't really help the gaming podcast NPC or the other Apple related podcasts. And so, it made sense if we're going to do YouTube to separate it out, give it room to grow kind of on its own, and let the algorithm do whatever it does. And that's kind of why Patreon, it's interesting with Patreon. It's like, I haven't been asked a little bit, why isn't this part of the club, for instance? And it's like, well, I mean, the thing is that there is overlap, but the reality is that Patreon really is like kind of the growth area for video game related stuff. Like there's more of an opportunity there for NPC to kind of like spread its wings and become a bigger thing than it is if we just make it like a tack on thing to the club, which I know some people would like, but but I just don't think enough people would like it to make it worth the effort that we have to go through to produce what is now a weekly show, and not actually even just a weekly show, but 2 weekly shows, because there's both the main one, which is still free, and everybody who already subscribed to the free show is getting it twice as much now, because it's going to be weekly instead of bi-weekly. And then there's the bonus thing. If you pay $5 on Patreon per month, you get NPC XLs, which is fun. And we actually even set up a little channel on The Worst Garbage, which is TWG, a very kind of a loose conglomerate of podcasts, a bit of a podcast network of its own that has a bunch of video game related stuff. And so NPC's over on their Discord server as well. So we have kind of a split between the video game channel and the club, as Club Backstories, as well as what's going on over at TWG, which is where Into the Aether, which Brendan is involved with, as well as other video game podcasts are. So it's kind of like, I guess I would call it Mac Stories adjacent. It's a little bit of a new thing for us. It's a little different than the usual.
Yeah, and I think firstly, like NPC XL, like what a good name for the
I know.
the members only version. Like,
yeah, that was Brendan's idea.
That Brendan. Oh my god. But I get what you're saying. I totally understand. Like you sort of mentioned this a few weeks ago, I think, to me, and I sort of, I'd been mulling it over and thinking about it occasionally. And you're right. It's easy to say, oh, I'm going to do whatever I want, whether that's YouTube or, other algorithm-based social media type things. And I think we would see this a lot on Twitter before, when in the before times when we would use it, where if you were the kind of person that wasn't willing to, be part of weird Twitter, you weren't going to get retweets and likes. And, if you didn't phrase things in the right way or the way the algorithm wanted, that's fine. You can carry on using it, but nobody was going to interact with what you were posting. And YouTube almost feels more mysterious because I'm not sure anybody really knows what's happening with the algorithm. But
no, that's
the
true.
obvious thing is, separate it away from the things that they're not related to. We talk about games here, and you do on App Stories. It's not that we don't talk about games, but it's not the main focus.
Right. And it's the thing is, like, from my perspective, it's not about making money on YouTube, because we don't make a lot of money on YouTube. I mean, very, very little money on YouTube. It's more about reaching new people, because one of the things, what you can't do on any online project, Mac Stories and any other one, is sit still. You cannot just kind of cater to the same core audience. Now, that the core audience is super important, and you want them to stay and you want them to be happy, but you also need to grow the pie, because inevitably people just kind of roll off and you have to kind of keep growing. Otherwise, even if you're growing, you're not necessarily growing the pie. Growing the pie is one thing, but even just to stay where you are today requires some sort of growth and reaching new people and finding new people for an audience. And with video in particular, video for a long time has been a big thing, and we ignored it for longer than we should have. And part of that was because we want to control our own thing, but you can't really do that in video, because video, hosting your own video is just like cost prohibitive and discovery prohibitive. You really have to be part of YouTube. And so, we're playing the YouTube game to a degree. I mean, most of the stuff at Mac Stories is going to remain on the Mac Stories channel. NPC is splitting off. I think it's the right call for that particular show. And I could see it happening in the future with other shows, but for the most part, I think at least where we are today with the other shows, most of those shows I think are better off on the Mac Stories channel than they are on their own. But, those algorithms and things and circumstances change. But I know people do ask like, oh, why are things changing? And people both don't really like things when they change. And I've kind of dealt with that a little bit, but for the most part, I think it's a good thing. I think, we need to evolve because we're living in a world that is like changing so quickly that you and I talk about it all the time, just blogging on the internet. Google isn't what it used to be. You don't reach people through search like you used to. So how do you find people to read your stuff? And if, assuming that you actually just don't want to like send words into the void, where do you find those people? And, there are places like Mastodon make a big difference. So does Blue Sky, for instance. But video is becoming a bigger thing, especially with podcasting. And I think it's I've enjoyed doing it, actually. I've enjoyed kind of like figuring out how YouTube works in 2025, but it's a lot of work to get set up. But once it's there, it kind of works pretty well.
Yeah, I think video has the same problem that podcasts have, that they're very hard to share. Like, and I mean that in the sense that
sure.
if you had a video that was just on Mac Stories, you've hosted the file and all of that.
Yeah.
Well, nobody's going to watch that. Maybe 20 people are going to watch it, and then it rolls off, and you can't. There's no way to like share a nice little clip of that easily. And I think podcasts had the same problem for a long time until the podcast apps added the the clipping feature that they all have now, which is nice.
Yep.
But like you say, even if video wasn't cost prohibitive, you need to be able to link somebody to a specific point in a video. And yes, technically, it's not like YouTube have got some magic website. Like, you can do that on your own website, but people don't know how to do it. Or, you've got to make sure that it works as well as YouTube, which it's never going to. So sometimes you've just got to, play the game and be where the people are.
Right. Yeah, and it's it's one of those things. It's a constant balancing act where you have to kind of figure out what things are going to be under your control and what things are you going to allow to be involved, be under someone else's control. And the reality is that at the end of the day, everything is to a degree controlled by somebody else, in the sense that you have a hosting service, you have WordPress, whatever it happens to be. There are tools that you're using and services that you're using to get your stuff online, whether it's writing or video or music or whatever. And you're always going to be relying on somebody. The question is, how quickly can you shift from one to another if you have to or if you want to? And that's kind of like the calculus, you kind of constantly make in your head, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Little final update, I guess, with the pens and the paper and me.
Oh yeah, I want to hear what's. I saw some pictures you posted recently.
Yeah, so I was watching Brad of the Pen Addict on his Twitch stream, and he does giveaways, a few times a stream, so a few times a week. And I got very lucky on one giveaway for a notebook and a postcard and some tape, and then he very kindly included I believe it's a prototype of the pen from his company, Spoke Design, and it's in this gorgeous purple color. I'm very, very happy with it, and I've also ordered way more, like so many more pens since we last spoke in the last 2 weeks. Like, I've got some like really nice fine liners that are, they're designed for like drawing and stuff, but I just wanted some thinner ones for writing. I've got more on the way. Yeah, it's a bit out of hand now.
Yeah. That's good though. I think it's always fun to have kind of like that kind of hobby where it's like you're collecting stuff as well as it's useful in just kind of your day to day too. So that's a lot of fun.
And as much as I'm saying it's out of hand, it's not a particularly expensive hobby. Because okay, I'm buying some fine liners, but it's it's £10 here, £5 there, whatever. I'm not in the market for the £60 to £100 pens, or way higher than that they go. I'm just kind of having fun and just trying out sort of cheap pens and different things, and it's good fun.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. All right, cool. Well, we'll be back in a couple of weeks, I guess, to talk about more stuff. What we didn't talk about, the elephant in the room, Rob, is that we don't have any snacks for people.
We don't, and we are, I think, on behalf of the entire Ruminate Corporation, we'd like to apologise, and we'll try not to let it happen again.
We should. Yeah, the chief snack officer has been slacking off. We will get on the chief snack officer. Make sure that we are distributed our quota of snacks for the month of March, and be back in a couple of weeks with something tasty and maybe something bizarre and disgusting too. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'll speak to you soon, John.
All right, bye-bye.